Hey, welcome to one of our very first live streams. Very excited to have you all here. I am joined here by our very own Nate Moore. Welcome to the program, the show. Welcome to whatever this is.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really excited to jump into the website and a bit of Astro and really happy to be here.
Yeah, so for background, we're going to do a deep dive into astro.build, something we're unofficially titling How Astro Built Astro with Astro, which is a very shameless ripoff off of Zach Coleman's How GitHub Builds GitHub with the GitHub. This is going to be a fun deep dive into the new site that we just launched. If you haven't seen it, it's live on astro.build. And this is one of really the first times in a while where we started something new from scratch to that like level of production. And a lot of new features existed that didn't exist the last time we did this. So Nate really, I think, had a lot of fun playing. Well, I won't speak for you, Nate, but I know Nate did some really cool things with Astro that I hadn't seen anyone else doing. So I'm excited to use this time to really dig into it.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I think first of all, for those of you that aren't familiar with Astro, we can talk a bit about what Astro is. So yeah, Astro is this tool that Fred and I and a couple other folks and a huge community are working on. And our tagline is kind of build fast websites faster. So really performance is a thing that we were frustrated with looking at the current options. So, we just really wanted a solution that was HTML first, outputting barely any JavaScript, none if possible. So your sites would just be really snappy and fast. It's a great solution for like static content, really anything that doesn't need a full JavaScript app. So yeah.
Yeah, like a marketing site or a dub.
That's a perfect use case for it.
A lot of content we wanted to load fast, and don't need to spin up a full JavaScript application on your browser to do it. So yeah, totally. This was kind of the perfect opportunity to test this out. Besides our Docker site, which is another great use case.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nate, I mean, how long have you been working? Like, when does this go back to? I mean, when we really first kicked this project off?
This website or Astro itself?
Astro is old as time. We all know this. Astro has existed since the dinosaur. No, this project.
Yeah, I would say like mid-December. So, a couple weeks into this. Definitely, more frenzied polish at the end there. But yeah, it was just a couple weeks and came together really quickly. I felt like it was really productive. So
yeah, we should say we worked with a great designer on this, Judson Collier, I want to say. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Yeah, it sounds like I am. Judson's awesome and had done some work with Figma and Loom and jumped in to help us with this, and I think knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, he's at Judson on Twitter, which is just mind-blowingly cool to have your first name as your handle.
Yeah. I've been chatting with Theo from T3 Tools, who has at Theo on Twitch, and it's just like, oh, that's just in his bio. It's like, you cannot have this. Don't ask. Don't DM me. None of that.
Yeah.
The few, the proud. Drew Powers also did a lot of work in the early days of kicking around this design. So definitely a shout out to him as well.
Yeah.
Cool. I can't really think of anything else. Do you want to just jump into it?
Yeah, let's jump into it. I'll kind of start with just talking about the site a little bit, and then we'll get into how we built it.
Yeah, and let's assume, I mean, this should be good for people who haven't maybe played around with Astro. So we can give, an actual high-level overview of how Astro works as well and use this as a chance to explore. But Nate really did some cool kind of pro things with Astro that I definitely hadn't seen before. So there hopefully should be some really cool like kind of tricks and tips and things that we can turn into more resources. But this will be my first time at least really digging into it with Nate. So I'll be asking questions out of my pure own fascination with what he's built. There's some really cool stuff going on.
Please.
All right.
Cool.
Let me. Sorry, I'm a StreamYard noob here, so give me 1 second.
Yeah. So here's the site. One thing we really wanted to capture was like the exciting, like early days of the web. So there's definitely a bit of nostalgia. that we were hoping to capture here, with the marquee and all that fun stuff. So we tried to add a couple little Easter eggs in here, just to kind of harken back to, that really optimistic time for the web. But yeah, the site design, like Judson knocked it out of the park. Yeah, so just to kind of dive in right away from the design, we had this fun like gradient, and I was kind of racking my brain on how to animate this, and I think we ended up with a really cool like lava lamp effect. And this is just some fun like CSS magic. One of my goals was to not use canvas because we didn't, minimal JS if possible. So what's going on here, our hero, is there's actually these background like blobs. And I think there's a blur on them, and I'll get into the actual code in a sec, but I just wanted to share this because it was really fun. Maybe it's on here. Yep. So if you take the blur off, it's just some gradients and these like ovals that are moving around.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and when you blur it all, it just makes this really cool effect. And they kind of like merge together.
Is it bad that I like this also? Like this also looks very cool and retro.
That's pretty cool too. But yeah, the blur just kind of like brings it all together. As like these different colors move around. So that's going on there. This is fun. I don't know if anybody noticed these like pixelated borders. This is actually in Chrome for now. It's a Houdini paint worklet. So you can actually, the Houdini is like the CSS and JavaScript in CSS. So you can literally control which pixels are drawn like canvas, but you can use it as the background.
Oh, wow.
So that was just a fun little detail.
I'm picturing every developer from like the early days of web development where you do rounded corners by creating a table with like differently. There's essentially a fake rounded. I don't know if anyone in chat has done that, but I can see the like tears of we've come so far from that, and you've just redone the hack I used to do.
We're back to that canvas thing. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of go through like a little bit more about Astro, one of the main focuses is HTML. So it's an HTML superset. We have these .astro files that look a lot like HTML, and they operate very much like it. But one thing we can do with that is heavily optimize, the JavaScript that you're using, and we can output like barely any. In most cases, none if you don't need it. So that leads to much higher TTI and web vitals and stuff. And we have this great primitive here. So automatic partial hydration, kind of, in a standard SPA type app, even though these are static, like the images and the headlines and everything, when your browser loads, you're going to be loading the whole thing and re-rendering everything. Even if you're, diffing it and not actually running the render, you're still shipping all that content in your JavaScript bundle. So what Astro does is, we have this islands architecture where you're only going to have the JavaScript for the actually interactive items.
Yeah, which is super cool if like one of those things might be really heavy, like an image carousel, and then something else is just like a shopping cart button, like the buy button.
Totally.
They like load in isolation, they load parallel. It's a really cool way to hydrate your site versus the whole thing is one big JS.
Yeah. Another really exciting thing is I think we're one of the few tools right now that support a whole bunch of frameworks. So basically, if you have your favorite thing that you build your components in or they already exist, you can just use those in Astro. and you get all the benefits of partial hydration and all that stuff with what you want to use. So yeah, there's some more fun stuff here, but let's dive into the code
Let's
because
see
I'd
some
love
code,
to show
Nate.
it all. Sorry.
No, sorry needed.
Ooh. Okay, so here is our structure here. So Astro, we have some file-based conventions. So public would be like, resources that are just going to be copied over to your final site. So like here's our CSS here. And then in source is going to be your source code. So we have pages. Index.astro is literally this page. So one of the really nice things about modern frameworks is that we use components instead of includes. And it's just a really nice mental model of like breaking up components. So this here is our front matter, except instead of YAML like it is in Markdown, it's JavaScript. So we can import all our components here and then just use them in our markup down here. So yeah, I kind of broke it down section by section. So there's components, and then the landing page, we'll have like the quote. That'll be it'll have some, just a section and then scoped styles for that section in the same file. Yeah, and these are automatically scoped.
Yeah, there's a really nice distinction. So like anything in the front matter is like server-side rendering. It's going to run on the server, never in the browser. And then everything below is markup. So your HTML or styles that'll get like essentially optimized in bundles for you. The ability to add scripts that will then also get bundled and hoisted. And yeah, this really nice distinction between like, here's the code that runs server-side. Here's the markdown that gets generated, essentially JavaScriptless, unless you opt in.
Totally. So one awesome example of that here is we have this sponsors section that pulls in our Open Collective sponsors. So all these wonderful folks back us on Open Collective and contribute. And what we can do is like literally just fetch the Open Collective API and then populate it based on that. So it's very JSX like, where you can do some logic to filter here, but then in your template, you're going to map over those individuals and return some markup for them.
Yeah, so that's a fetch that happens at build time, gets built statically, and then never has to run in the server and your browser anywhere, right?
Yeah. Yep. That's so cool. We have sponsors here, and none of that fetching happens. There's no requests on the client.
And was that an async await top level that I saw in sponsors?
It sure was.
Nice.
Yeah,
and fetch too.
Right here. Yep.
Nice. That is, I think, coming in Node 14 for everyone, but we were able to build this in such a way that it just gets supported in, no, is it Node 16?
I think it's 14.
This is one of those cool things where it's like not everyone in Node has this yet, but like we were able to add it. And I'm like so excited about just such a little thing. But yeah, fetching data is super straightforward.
It's really nice. And there's this other interesting thing going on here. So if you've worked with the web components API, there's this feature called slots, and we've kind of borrowed that in Astro. So let's see, what's a good example of this? So like in our hero section, I have slot here, slot title, and I'm passing in the headline. So if we look at the hero, here's the hero component. Let me, oops. If I hide this, there we go. So when we use the slot image, or the slot element, slot name equals title, we can just pass in using the slot attribute. And this trick that we're using here is Astro supports a global fragment. like JSX does. That's just globally available. So if you want to slot in text, you can't set attributes on a text node, but you can set it on a fragment. And then this gets output as H2 and then your text inside. So I used that pattern. If you look here, see H2 and the text that we have.
Yeah, this is what I really wanted to talk to you about, because this feels like something that I haven't really seen anyone do. Like in the React world, and this has at least been my experience, like everything is either props or like the one child, like the children. And you end up with this like, or like the props or functions that return thing. But at the end of the day, it's like everything has to be almost like stringified into these props. Which like for title here makes kind of sense. You're saying like the headline is a string basically. I'm sending you a fragment. There's no element. It's just this string is basically what I want you to inject. But like you could totally just put like bold here as like, strong headline, and all of a sudden that becomes the content, or multiple elements, or like a full other component even, and there's no API change needed.
Totally.
That's so cool.
So yeah,
That's
you
awesome.
don't. Yeah, and the reason I was doing this is because instead of diving into your components and editing all your content in there, what you can do is build these really dry, reusable components. Not that you'd probably reuse the hero, but if you want to change the content, all you have to do, it's right on the top level. So you just have to go edit this. So yeah, slots are super powerful. Something I'm really excited about. Even here, we have this like layout component.
Yeah, talk about layouts for a while, because I feel like we talk about those as a thing that like Markdown can inherit from. So you write your Markdown, give it a layout, and like the two smash together. But like you seem to really be leveraging that. And from the time I did spend in this code base, like different pages are almost taking different layouts, but they're not like pulled in magically, right? You use them as components here.
Yeah, layouts are essentially components. And the idea here, I think I'm using, let's see, this is actually in the components folder, right? So base layout.
Is there a distinction between components or layouts, or is like basically a layout is a type of component?
A layout is a type of component. We're actually finalizing that behavior. There's a bit of a gotcha right now where they are a little different, but that's going away for 1.0. So essentially they are the same thing. It's just where they live, what folder they live in.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I have this pattern where this is just kind of some shared markup. Like I wanted a root and the main content to have an ID so you can skip to it, right? With the skip link. Let me reload this. So we have a skip link here, and when we hit enter, it'll actually skip us to the content. So I wanted that implemented everywhere, which meant I wanted this main ID content on every page. So I'm just kind of using that to make sure this is consistent everywhere, and we have our default slot inside of that.
Oh, nice. Okay, so every page uses this. They get the header for free, that main content jump for free, the footer for free, and then that slot is like the children of just, hey, whatever you put in this component, this layout component, becomes like the page content within that wrapper.
Yeah, so anything that's doesn't have a slot attribute will just go in the default slot.
Gotcha. So you're passing nav in. Was that just for like a future world where we might have different navigation?
Yep.
Nice.
So nav gets a special. It's kind of projected to the header here, just by saying slot nav.
Gotcha.
But then everything else goes inside main. So yeah, it's this really nice way of working.
Is margin bottom? Did you sneak some tailwind in here? What is that margin bottom prop?
So yeah, that was just some like laziness of I just wanted there were a couple instances where I needed to toggle that.
Oh, gotcha. It's like it's like an attribute basically. Like the existence of it is setting it to true.
Totally. So it's just toggling the class. Yeah, it's not the cleanest thing in the world.
That's my job. I'm trying to find all the. You built this beautiful site, and I'm like, well, what about that one prop that you probably built in like a
Yeah.
late night? That's funny.
So yeah, that's a really cool pattern, and we actually have. So you can make this 404.astro page, and most hosts will pick up on that. Our site is hosted on Netlify, who is a sponsor, and they generally gave us a free open source license for Netlify.
Yeah, Netlify is awesome. Cannot shout them out enough. They're the best.
Totally. But if you have a 404.html file in your output, they pick up on that. So here, if I go to like, that'll just take us to the 404 page. But I bring that up because this also has the base layout, and this controls the props to the nav.
Nice.
Because the colors are inverted. So instead of, putting tons of props like invert nav was true on here.
Oh God, right?
Yeah. So this kind of gets around the like prop drilling issue that you usually run into.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Can you pass a component as a prop? I can't remember the answer to this. Like if you wanted, like the React way, right, is like, okay, like take a prop that's a component and then like pass that along, but like make sure you've set it up properly. Do we support that, or is slots the right way forward?
Slots is our API for that. Gotcha. Yeah.
Cool.
You can definitely pass data in, any JSON object, map, whatever, and then render out based on that prop. But yeah, slots are how we do projection or children.
Very cool. Nate, I have a very important announcement. Fuzzy is back. He was stepped away for a second, and he's back.
Thank you for the update. Hey, Fuzzy.
Hey, Fuzzy. Great to see you. This is so cool, Nate. Awesome. Yeah. The slots thing is like I feel like there's like a fine line to walk there, which is like making sure we're like promoting good like web native APIs, like the web component APIs around slots, without stepping all over them. So you couldn't use like a web component slot with Astro, because we, it's like this kind of line you have to walk where it's like we want to be super focused on like web fundamentals, but also not just clobber them.
Yep. Yeah, it's possible that API might need to be like use slot in the future. We're still kind of finalizing that. Astro's in beta, but we're barreling towards a 1.0 and just kind of finalizing all that stuff.
Was that TypeScript I saw when you hovered over it? I saw like a little.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. I forgot that we supported that.
Yeah. So you can even like jump to your components if you hold the option and jump in. So if you are using Astro, definitely make sure you install the official Astro language support.
Look at that. Activates in 100 milliseconds. You're not going to get that anywhere else. That's pure speed.
Well, they activated in 3 milliseconds. Yeah. What other cool stuff is going on here? So, do you mind if I plug this icon thing I built?
I was going to ask about it if you didn't talk about it. I saw Sprite.provider and I saw something called Astro icon. Yeah, please. I'm sure this isn't me faking it. I know you've talked about this a lot. I like dug into one or two things like deep in the code of it. I actually haven't used it myself yet.
Okay. So SVGs are this amazing tool. And I feel like most libraries are not geared towards using SVGs. Like in the React world, there's this like, oh, I need to pre-process my SVG and turn it into JSX so I can use it. Or like I have an icon library and I need to publish it as JSX.
Yeah, I don't want to snitch on any packages, but there's like one that comes to mind as you say that, which I've been scarred by, where the whole package is every component as a JSX component, as a React component. So every icon is a React component. Every icon is JavaScript, and it's all getting like, you better hope your tree shaking set up. Otherwise, you use one component and like your entire app becomes a megabyte of icon JavaScript, which is just like, oh no, so
Yeah.
unnecessary.
I mean, there's no way around it because it's a client-side tool. So you end up needing to include a lot of those in your bundle. That's kind of one of the big advantages of Astro being server-side only, is that we can kind of get around that. But yeah, there's this, let's see. You will see here where we have this fun thing. So we have all these framework logos. We could inline them in the page, but that's kind of a pain, and I never want to do that manually. And what I usually want is a sprite sheet. So
like you Google like React SVG, you like find the SVG, you copy it in. I've definitely done that plenty.
Yep. But if you're going to use an icon, multiple places on a page, it's really nice to have these. It's called an SVG sprite sheet. So what that looks like is this SVG element down here, and then each icon is a symbol with a specific ID. And then up here, you can just do use, and it's essentially the same thing as having the inline SVG right there, except it's a lot smaller. But again, that's kind of a pain to do manually. So yeah, there's this package called Astro-icon that I'm the author of. But what you can do is import Sprite from there, and this will automatically generate a sprite sheet based on the icons that you're using. And the reason I brought up the JSX thing is because it's just SVG here. So source/icons, dump all your SVGs in there, and then you can just reference them by name. So, framework/React is this lovely SVG, and it gets automatically turned into a sprite for us.
Nice. Now, wasn't there a sense of like data loading as well? Like that you could, I feel like the last time I looked at this, like we were pulling them from somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. So that's another thing.
Like,
I don't know
this
if you've
is
ever...
super cool already, don't get me wrong, but like let's say I don't have these SVGs on hand and I don't want to go Googling for them.
Totally. So there's this great project called Iconify, which I think is iconify.design. And what they've done is taken all the open source popular icons or icon packs, and then have made them like normalized and have an API for that. So they have all these amazing, like, oh, I want material icons, and there's just so many options, like 10,000 material icons. So with Astro Icon, it pulls in all of this from a remote service. So you're not downloading, 100,000 icons in your node modules.
Right. In the past, like each of these collections would be like an npm package that you had to download and save it all locally, and it's all either JS or some SVG
Totally.
that gets injected via JS. This is different from that, right?
This is different. So let's see. Do you mind if I spin up a new project real quick?
Yes, I mind. This is not what we agreed to. Stick to the script, mate. Stick to the script.
Sorry, I'm already doing it.
No, of course. Yeah, no, I really want to see this.
Okay, so I'm just going to install...
What was that website you just went to, by the way? That was a shout out.
That was astro.new. So if you want to start a Astro project, just make a quick reproduction or start something. Astro.new is awesome. This is all of our templates that are in our GitHub repo, but you can just open them right in your browser and start developing right away.
Yeah, now this was mainly a spite-driven project, right? Where I think I once tweeted like, "Oh, it's so weird that like all these in-browser editors are creating like project name.new as a way to link to their own thing," and then everyone was like, "Yeah, well, like what else is it going to be?" And I was like, "Oh no, we should build something." And I think you like already were like, "No, Astro.new should be this cool thing." So spite-driven development, y'all, it works.
So yeah, I just installed Astro icon, I think. Yes, I did. So let me bring that in. Import icon from Astro icon.
And so this is running, also shout out to StackBlitz. This is, if you haven't seen this before, super cool.
Yeah,
It's running in the browser, but it's like literally running a version of Node that's been
it's
like
Node.
Wasmified.
Yep.
Nice.
Oops. I forgot. There's one step you have to do, which is make external.
I
Sorry
love
for
that.
just taking over your project.
I love this error message. Just like, no, 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 Nate, you don't understand. Your line must be greater than or equal to 1.
Yeah, but they got -1. So that's obviously, it's a very clear error message
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I'm
Yes,
sure. I'm
that
sure
is
we can
something
improve
that
that.
I haven't been able to work on yet. But okay, enough with the ceremony. Uh, icon, I didn't pass in a name, but I can just go grab any of these. So RI alert fill. I'm gonna say this is the pack here is RI, and the name is alert fill.
Okay, so pack is like the collection. Oh my god, that's cool. That's all.
So
Whoa! I promise this is genuine. I actually haven't seen you demo this yet. This is so cool.
yeah, so what this does is it goes and grabs the SVG from this API that I wrote, which is powered by Iconify, and it pulls in the SVG on the fly. So, and it just inlines it right here.
So zero JavaScript at build
Zero
time. It's injecting
JavaScript,
this in a sprite sheet.
totally. This one's inline because I'm just using the icon
Wait,
component.
is there an iframe there that I spy?
That might have been. This is I inspected on
Oh,
Stack.
stack boats. Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, there's no
I
iframes.
was going to say, wow,
Um,
how is this working?
no, but then you can say like fill is current color. Whoops. And then here I'll say like body color red, and it just works.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
I'm assuming it's like growing to fill your window, but is there a way to size it as well of your props?
There sure is. Let's make it 32 pixels.
Can you give this a class and style it that way?
Yep.
Oh my God, Nate. Stop thinking of the things I'm going to ask before before I've asked them. Oh, that's cool. Right, because it's just an SVG, right? It's still an SVG element. It's just referencing the sprite sheet instead of itself being the body. So if you use like 100 of these, it's still the same page weight essentially of the
Yep.
definition, and then just like a much lighter individual SVG.
Totally.
Oh, that's cool. And all automatic. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So if you want to do that, there's the sprite component, and you just need to wrap this in a sprite provider.
Oh, there's a nice error message. Look at that.
And then this is going to turn into our sprite. Now, again, this is not our iframe. I'm just debugging in here. So now we get this sprite sheet, and this is not duplicating the markup. We just have this use thing.
Oh, so that's how you opt into the sprite sheet. Got it. Okay.
If I go and use this 4 times, I'm only going to get, this is the only markup we use.
Right. And if this had like, a huge definition of how this SVG is supposed to work.
Totally.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. In this case, it might actually be heavier to use the sprite sheet.
Well, I was about, as I was saying, I was like, oh no, wait, am I digging my own grave? With gzipping, I'm sure there's especially if you're changing sizes and changing shapes,
yep.
That's going to be essentially, 0, I think.
So yeah, that's let's see, that is Astro icon.dev. There's a little link to the GitHub there.
Nice.
So yeah, that's a little plug of my personal project.
That's super cool. Yeah, I mean, like this makes so much sense, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface of like components that do like this is like it's pulling from an API basically to build.
Yes.
That's wild. That's so cool. That's just like it's an invisible component to do that.
Totally. So this component icon.astro, this is just calling fetch internally and grabbing the HTML.
What was that a website again? I'm just going to put it. It's icon. No, astroicon.dev.
Astroicon.dev.
Cool, there we go. Throwing that there.
So yeah, that's a project I've been working on, and I feel like it's unlocked by the fact that Astro is server side and you can just easily do fetch and stuff. Hey, there's a marquee. I love it.
Yeah, shout out to the marquee y'all built at the top, right?
Yeah.
I feel like people were really digging into like, wait, like is the marquee element still a thing?
The marquee element is deprecated.
So sad. Heartbreaking.
But it's actually kind of difficult to recreate. So there's good reasons it's deprecated. But yeah, I created this not marquee custom element. There's no JavaScript. It just kind of was a little Easter egg. And
Nate, stop giving a nuanced take on why they might have deprecated it. I want to be mad.
Yeah. RIP marquee.
And I feel like this is leveraging that cool thing about slots, which this I think we did chat about. Like that is being passed in. Like to edit this, you don't have to go. If I wanted to change the banner, I'm not going into the marquee, not marquee component.
Right.
But I'm also not having to pass every bit of copy as like a JavaScript string to a prop.
No.
Yeah, can you show? Because I feel like that's like a huge thing that I had never seen before here, which is this idea of like all of your copy is in a single place. You're not distributing it at like the component level. You're just passing in copy where you need it.
I think this one's in the nav. This might not be the case for this one component. Oh, it's in header. Okay, this one is just prop based, but
no, this whole point ruined.
But it's cool. Whatever pattern works for what you're building, you can kind of do both of them, and that's a really nice thing about it.
So you could move that as an array up into the front matter of the page, which is pretty much in line with how you might want to do that with React or another front end framework. It's like that prop drilling idea of just pass it all the way down. But
totally. So
it also gives you the freedom to treat it as a slot. So it's not in the JavaScript, it's in the markup and getting passed that way.
Yep. And this, here's another fun thing about Astro. You don't need a top level wrapper for your components. So this header.astro, we don't need a fragment or anything. We can just dump out all of our children elements here.
Remind me, is slot also optional? Is there like a default slot that everyone has as their children that just gets added at the bottom? We don't need to explore it if you don't know the answer, but I was curious seeing that slot at the bottom. Is that even required?
Here, this, yes, it is. So
Okay.
if you want to have the children in there, you do need to render slot here. But if you don't put a name on it, you can do named slots. Hello, or this is equivalent to slot name equals default.
Gotcha. And that's like default children. Okay, cool. So it is required if you want the ability to pass children, because we need to know where to inject them.
Totally. Yeah, because you could see like, oh, I want the children in front or behind or, anywhere.
Getting some real love for the no need for a fragment if you don't need one in Astro. Yeah, that's always been a pain. It's like, and it's like, no, it's because that's, I mean, it's the fun part about getting to be more HTML based than JavaScript based, which is like, that's a limitation of like a JavaScript function can't return two things. It always returns one thing. But for us, it's like, this is a template. Like a template is HTML, it's content. So that can be as many things as it takes.
Totally.
We're just rendering this out, which is like the freedom we have with Astro. It's super powerful.
Yeah, totally. Fred, can we talk about the grid?
Let's have a frank discussion about grids in 2022.
Okay. So you may notice we have this fun animated grid on here. This was a pain. I apologize. When we launched the site, we had a really big performance issue, and people were getting really laggy scrolling. And it turns out it was this grid. So
I was gonna say, thanks to all of this hard work, Nate, I'm shipping you a Chromebook from 5 years ago, and all development must now be done on it to guarantee.
Perfect. That would be a really good idea.
Everyone.
Yeah, M1s have spoiled me. That's for sure. But yeah, one thing this was doing before was, if we look at this, I had a single element that had like repeating gradient here. And then I was transforming it in 3D space. So it was actually moving along. Turns out that's really expensive. So what I had to do, it was also a huge element because of the perspective here. It was like way bigger than it looks on screen. So what I ended up doing is splitting the horizontal image, the vertical lines, I mean, those are in a div, and these are this is just a repeating gradient, and that does have the 3D perspective on it. But then what the rest of these lines are is just a div. And these don't have any complicated transforms. It's just scale and translate Y. And if you look at this animation somewhere, it's in my code. Yeah, so this animation basically calculates the offset of the line based on which child number it is. And then these can just be really inexpensively translated. And the animation basically moves it from where it is to the line next to it, and then it resets.
Oh, that's cool. So they're all individually moving down the page.
Yes, because that's cheaper than... I'm pretty sure this is the case, that is cheaper if you're doing translate and opacity animations to do that than it is to just animate like the background image.
Gotcha. Oh, so there's right, because I saw scale Y. Are you trying to make them grow as they get closer?
Yes, they do grow just
the
a
lines.
little bit.
Okay, gotcha. That's cool.
Because it gives that effect of being in 3D space, but it's actually 2D.
And isn't the opacity? I thought there was like a mask that covered it, but is the opacity actually now each line individually is changing its own opacity?
There is a mask on the overall thing.
Like, what if you turn that off? What does that look like?
Oh, there's a mask on this. So if I turned all these off, I don't know how to do that.
But... I'm purely curious.
So there's a mask on this to get it to fade.
Oh, cool.
So if I turn that off, it just...
Got it.
There's no fade point. And then...
And what's that property? I've never used that myself. Is that a CSS? Is that a Houdini? That's not a Houdini thing, right?
No, it's a mask image, and you can pass it, same as like a background image, you can pass it a gradient. It's still prefixed. So WebKit has WebKit mask image. And then, yeah, these have an opacity based on their order in the stack, basically. So the further away it is, the more transparent it is.
Very cool. I feel like we haven't talked at all, but it's all over here as well. Like that Astro dash and then an ID class. That's all the automatic scoping of the CSS, right?
Yes. So
it just scopes. It's like I forget because I work with Astro so much now. It's like, oh my God, you're just writing CSS in the style component. Like no styled JavaScript, no CSS in JavaScript. Like it's just an HTML-like CSS language.
Yeah. We're definitely not the first to do that. I think Vue has done that for a really long time. Svelte our approach is very inspired by Svelte's. One of the things we wanted to do is not obfuscate the class name. So if you're using something like CSS modules, you get like a weird hash as your class name here, which is good in some situations. But if you have a global style sheet, you still want to be able to target grid, right? So what this generates is essentially grid.astro hash. So that's our approach, is by locally scoping these to an injected.
And then if you don't want
Astro
scoping, you do style global.
Yep. So you can just go style global, and then this will be global styles.
And you can put multiple style components next to it. Like you can do like everything scoped, and then like a couple rules can go global, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
So you can
that's
go
my pattern of choice.
totally. So like everywhere I have a grid, I want it to be red. And then in this particular grid, I'm going to scope these.
That's to this component's grid.
Yeah, but this is global.
That's cool. And this is all deduped, right? So like 10 grids on your page, it's just one set of style rules, one ID that's being generated.
Yep.
That's cool. I'm really sorry to be rushing through this, but I realize we got some great questions in chat. I want to make sure we get to them before we have to wrap up.
Please.
I'm scrolling up. I'm just going to start from the top. So this will be a nice little blast through the past. Trout had a great question, which was how do stack traces work for either server or browser.js? Can we get line numbers via source maps or similar? And real quick before you answer, if anyone else has any other questions, please throw them in chat. I will be sure to get to as many as we can with the time we have.
Yeah. Fred, you got to get your streamer thing on and point.
Throw like and subscribe.
Chat, y'all.
Yeah. Actually, no joking. Like while we're talking now, please subscribe. But okay, fair enough.
Okay. Yeah, great question. So we do have stack traces. It's still something we're working on improving, but we have this compiler that runs in WebAssembly. It's authored in Go, so it has near native performance. It's really fast. And one of the great things we got from moving over to that is that we have source maps now for Astro files. It's not perfect. We're still working on it. Towards 1.0, it's going to get a lot better. But yeah, we should get stack traces in the server here. If you're running, npm run dev, and you screw something up in the front matter, it'll tell you which file and where that's happening. Yeah. In your console, because this stuff runs on your server.
Yeah, I feel like we don't talk about it enough, but it was a huge part of our move to Vite. It was also Vite's stack trace support is really solid, which is one thing Snowpack always suffered from. So yeah, we have pretty solid support now for that sort of thing. And I think everything in the browser is just like sent to the browser. So open it up in the browser console, play around with it. During development, it's all unbundled. So you get this kind of really file-based, well, this will be the production site, but yeah, there's plenty of really cool stuff going on in the dev build.
Yes. So yeah, in dev, we'll get, let me pull that up. Yeah, in dev. Oh, you know what? Brave Inspector isn't working for me.
I'm going to jump to the next question, so no worries.
Please continue.
Got a question about I-89, about internationalization. Any plans on that for the site? And if so, how would you go about that in any Astro website?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that we have plans on it on this landing page for just yet. We're definitely focused on 1.0 for right now. But our docs do have, what's happening? I know I didn't lose internet because I'm still talking to you. Okay.
Are you, Nate? Are you?
Our docs have internationalization. Just an amazing community of people that have translated a lot of these. So if you want a good example of that, you can hop over to our repo where this is, and we have some instructions on translations. But just to show off the code, it's pretty simple because we support markdown files. We just have, language codes, and then let's look at like English here has all our markdown files as pages.
Yeah, and you're in the pages directory. So these are literally the file-based routes that are being generated into pages.
So for Spanish, we'll have the same thing. And you just write it in Spanish. That's definitely a really good example if you look at our docs in our mono repo.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's the other part of internationalization, which we have less of a clear, like, we've tested this and like, this is the official way to do it, which is if I want some piece of UI, like a button or a component, to always be translated based on the language. Right now, this is all fully page translations. But like, I think on this page as a header doesn't change yet, just because we haven't really tackled that ourselves. But I know people in our community have been working on that. Yeah, like sponsored by, for example.
Right.
Because that's the layout. That's not the actual page content.
Right. Yeah, I'm presumably you could use like a really well supported JavaScript internationalization library and just use variables in your expressions in your Astro file like this. We're still sorting that out, but there's a story, and we're keeping improving it.
Mark Pinero had a question about Astro Icon, which I want to get to if we have time, but it's about using Astro Icon inside of something like React, which I think is a whole can of worms. If we have time at the end, I will definitely come back to that one. But cool. I want to keep moving. Scrolling. Do you have time to talk about the SPA page transition behavior on the site? Yeah, that's a super kind of subtle thing, but I think Nate did a bunch of work right at the end to get that working. Would love to, dig it, please, Nate. How'd that work?
Yeah, that's a great call out. I think we ended up disabling it for right now. But it's something we want to keep working on, and I was kind of prototyping it for, maybe a future Astro feature. So all I did was create a little script. Where is it? It is in scripts. It's not there. It is called SPA. And basically this intercepts clicks on links and then fetches the URL and then parses it as a document, and then it does some diffing to figure out which nodes have changed, and then animates them back and forth. So hopefully there will be more on that in the future, but it wasn't quite ready for prime time yet.
Yeah, I feel slightly guilty. I feel like I got to troll Nate the day of the launch, where I was like, I found one bug during development. I was like, instead of fixing this, I'm just going to see what it looks like to get turbo links, which is like the Rails alternative. And then like deleted the file and put in turbo links and created a PR. And he was like, no, I put time into this. You can't just like pull this out and put it, some open source. So it was a good story in that like both turbo links and this custom support seem to both work pretty well. But I think instead of trying to settle that difference, we just pulled them both out for later.
Yeah, I think so. Astro outputs what's called multi-page apps. So basically a standard website, how we built them for a long time. But people like the SPA experience of really quick loads and just like not getting that little refresh. So I think people forget that every SPA is embedded in an MPA already. So you can do whatever you want. You can totally add that SPA-like experience to an Astro site.
Yeah. I also heard, what was it? Someone used the term, because we use island architecture for this idea of like only hydrating the JavaScript in like the little islands of interactivity. And someone was saying for their migration, they like just, because they were migrating an old React app, they just put their whole page on as one big island. It's like a data lake. It's this whole thing is one island, but it's like, that still works. We're going to render it server side and then we're going to hydrate it on the client. Even if your island ends up being a large part of the page, in the future, you can always pull it apart or just leave it as is. It's going to be pretty close to performant.
Yep.
So islands come in all shapes and sizes. You got, I don't know, the whole world's an island if you think about it.
Yeah, what I like to do is like keep any JavaScript like as far down the tree as possible, because then you get the smallest islands. So like if this needed JavaScript, I would just hydrate the button.
Yeah. This is a quick thing to touch on because we didn't talk about it enough, but Fuzzy brings up a great point. Style can be anything. So it's currently run through PostCSS. You can throw a lang attribute on there and get Sass or their alternative syntax, which is like curly brace. Is it the same name? Is it Sass and new Sass and old Sass?
SCSS is like CSS, but SASS is indented.
One looks very familiar to me and one looks completely alien to me. But either way, we support both. It's the same compiler. So that's also available, just built into Astro.
Yep.
Fuzzy, thanks for calling that out. With a couple minutes we have left, because I do want to not go over the time we said we would. We have a question in our Discord. So if anyone's not in our Discord, it's astro.build/chat. It's an awesome community, really fun place. If people are in there, throw some emojis in the chat. But we have a question from McFadden. I'm definitely not saying that right. I apologize. But this person asks, I saw class list in a while ago. Is that Astro specific, and what does that do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not using it on the site right now. I think I may have started before that landed in Astro. But yeah, you can. We have this idea that Astro directives have like a colon in them. So we have this one called class list.
Right.
And this is similar to like class names, the NPM package, or classics, if you know that one, where it'll basically convert an array or object to a string of classes. So if I were to say like 1 is true, 2 is false, this would set class to be 1.
Nice. Oh, I actually kind of forgot that got merged in. So that's currently in Astro?
To the best of my knowledge.
Nice. I remember chatting about that a bunch. I'm very happy that's also available.
Totally.
Yeah, great question. Cool. I think that's about it. If you have a couple of minutes to chat about, can you use an Astro component inside of another framework? So we talk a lot about like your islands living within the Astro application, but is the opposite true? Can an Astro component live within an island, live within a React component or a Svelte component?
Yeah, that's where the edges of the Astro file format get like really hard to wrap your head around. We get that question a lot. But if one of these were oh yeah, that's a great call out. These are all Astro components. There's no JavaScript, but you can add like a React component in here, or a lit custom element, or all these sorts of things.
Man,
so
don't tell me we got all this way and didn't even show off like the whole partialization thing.
No,
yeah,
but it's right here. You can check it out.
That's true. We didn't talk about it.
No, yeah, if you click on any of these, it'll give you a little example right on StackBlitz. So yeah, we didn't even talk about this. I can't believe we didn't get to it, but
it's like the coolest thing.
I know. You can use your JSX component, Preact, inside of Astro. And this client visible will mean when it becomes visible. Yeah, we can do a deep dive on this maybe next time. But it'll only hydrate when it's visible. What's happening here is we're passing in children. So I guess in theory you could do, icon and pass in the SVG inside of a component, and this would be rendered out as children. So you don't get the same slot behavior that Astro has, but you at least get the default slots.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I know John. I don't know if he's watching right now, but Jonathan Neal on the core team has been really excited about this idea of like import assertions and this idea of how you can control what importing something means. So like right now, if you import an Astro component, we're going to give you this like thing that's supposed to run in the server. But there's like totally a world where you could say like, I want to import this Astro component, but like give it to me as static HTML or give it to me as something that can run on the web. or like maybe we could even automatically do that. There's some things here that we could explore. Right now, it's really about Astro as like the base foundation, and then peppering in your components if you need them, a React component, a Vue component. But I'm really excited. I think there's totally some stuff we could try around this that would be really interesting.
Yep. I don't, you know what? I do want to spoil it. There's a little Easter egg here. If you open up astro.build, because we built this with all Astro components. Yes, Sarah, please send help. I need your Chromebook. Yeah, one thing that was really important to us is that if you disable JavaScript, you're going to have the same experience with the website. And you get this little joke here that you will really enjoy Astro if you are not a JavaScript fan. It makes it really easy to build Zero.js sites.
Did anyone find? I feel like I saw you had a thread of people trying to find the Easter eggs. Was that the one that nobody found?
It was the last one to be found.
Okay, people found it.
There's a couple others. You can find them on Twitter or just go search for yourself.
Very fun. Nate, this has been great. Thank you so much for the walkthrough. I genuinely learned some things here.
Yeah, this was a blast. We should do this more often.
I have a feeling we will. Yeah, if people had some favorite parts of this, like we want to turn this into docs and like best practices. So please shout out in the chat or join us on Discord. There's a thread going on right now for the chat there. If you had some things that you really enjoyed here, like we want to turn those into more things that we can all learn from, like literally myself included. So please don't hesitate to share that with us. That's how we grow.
Yep.
I got nothing else. Nate, anything you want to share before we wrap up?
There's a lot we didn't get to, so we'll definitely have to do this again. I totally forgot that like we have a blog, and there's exciting stuff there too. So more to talk about, more soon.
Yeah, jumping into the docs to show internationalization makes me think a deep dive of that, even though it's less shiny at this point, could still be super interesting. Like we got our like, here's a website that shows off something. We got our like documentation. We got our like, all these things are their own use case, which Astro is so well designed for. We should really give each their kind of moment in the sun.
Yeah, I feel like we have a bunch of awesome community members that have been super involved in the docs, and getting them on here to chat about that would be awesome.
Oh, brilliant. I love it. Cool. Let me remove again my StreamYard know-how. Nate, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Yeah, thanks for hosting, Fred.
Everyone, whoever's made it all the way through, thank you. Genuinely, I'm going to say this as unironically as I can. Please subscribe. You'll get notifications about more videos we do. It's a great way for us to grow Astro, grow the channel. We're really hoping to do more of this stuff in the future. So please hit that button. Rate, like, comment, subscribe, whatever, all the things. And hopefully see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks.
Bye. Why the button? Awkward way.